Good afternoon, UTLA family. Good afternoon to all the educators, parents, grandparents, guardians, and students watching today. We are going to keep it short because as of this afternoon, spring break has officially begun, and many of you have plans, or even better, no plans at all. Today, we have updates on the next steps after UTLA educators ratified the agreement on a safe return. We will be talking about a new national civil rights campaign for special education. With an 89% yes vote, UTLA has approved the agreement with LAUSD on a safe, welcoming, and science-based return to in-person classrooms and hybrid instructional teaching and learning model. The agreement was also passed unanimously by the LAUSD School Board earlier in the month. The focus now is on implementation, enforcement, and accountability. UTLA folks, look for an email today with clarity on pressing issues, including accommodations for health risk and what to do if you have not been fully vaccinated before your site reopens. LAUSD has announced its intention to return to in-person learning at 50 elementary schools and 10 early education centers on April 12th. The remaining elementary schools and EECs on April 19th, and secondary schools in the last week of April. As stated in the agreement, all three safety measures, Los Angeles County being out of purple tier, prioritizing educators for access to the vaccine, and appropriate safety protocols must be met before educators can be required to return to school sites physically. The agreement's health and safety protocols are secure even if local, state, and federal guidelines change. That includes modernized ventilation, daily cleaning, proper PPE, and a 6-foot physical distancing policy. The CDC's revised guidance on needing only 3 feet of space was rash and based on a flawed study, and it will not impact LA schools. The 6 feet distance will stay in place for students, educators, and families in Los Angeles. The agreement lasts until the end of the school year, and we will be bargaining a new agreement for the 21-22 school year. As with every contract, this agreement is the floor, not the ceiling. How do we use our experiences to guide the next agreement, especially when it comes to the hybrid schedules? How do we institutionalize the intel educators will gain over the next few months? And what can we bargain to ensure that educators are not overworked and under-supported? How can we make the hybrid schedules work better for educators, parents, and students? These are the conversations that need to happen in every UTLA chapter, in our chapter action teams, and on our steering committees. As always, our strength comes from our collective voice and from putting students and families at the center of everything we do. During this global pandemic, there has been newfound public recognition of how essential schools are to society. Educators, students, and parents have always known this, and the public understands its importance. If our schools are essential, they need to be funded like they are essential, and they need to be treated like they are essential. More funding is only part of the answer. We need to envision and organize behind the healthy, healing, and equitable return that our students and communities deserve, now and in the years to come. For our students and their families, COVID-19 has laid bare many vulnerabilities and needs that public schools must meet. Some of our students are returning to physical schools who have lost loved ones. Others will be housing insecure because their parents lost their jobs in the economic fallout. Our Black and Brown students will be returning to in-person learning after watching this horrific pandemic ravage their communities. And our Asian American and Pacific Islander students will be returning to campus when Asian hate is high and violent, hateful incidents are on the rise. And to be real, all of our students, families, and educators are struggling to comprehend the senseless gun violence that seems unending. Public education has the power to heal, whether virtual or in person. The power of a classroom to make students feel a part of a connected community. The power of psychiatric social workers to reach a student who suffered mentally and emotionally from isolation. The power of arts, music, dance, and drama to get children dreaming and creating in new ways. The power of all school staff, early ed, teachers, school nurses, audiologists, teacher librarians, PSA counselors, DIS specialists, adult education teachers, academic counselors, to build a school ecosystem that supports our students in equitable and life-affirming ways. As a part of this vision for a healthy, healing, and racially equitable return, UTLA helped build a new coalition driving a national civil rights campaign for special education. As we go from global pandemic to recovery in our schools, now is the time for the federal government to fulfill the promise made in 1975 to America's students to fund the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act at 40% and to provide a free and appropriate education for all students with disabilities. When Congress fails to fulfill its promise to fund IDEA and to protect the civil rights of students with disabilities, then schools, students, families, and communities suffer. This week, educators and mothers of students with disabilities from across the country filed a legal petition with the U.S. Department of Education to quickly repair the damage of the dismantled civil rights protections sustained through the DeVos-Trump years and to rebuild the Department of Education under President Biden and Secretary Miguel Cardona by fully funding IDEA at the levels promised in 1975. As a part of the petition filing, we held a press conference that amplified the stories of some amazing parents from LA, Boston, Austin, San Antonio, and Madison, Wisconsin. As mothers of students with disabilities, they have learned to be advocates for their babies in a system that far too often lets them down. The Washington Post ran 2 exclusive stories on the new campaign and a related UCLA study. You can find the links on the new Fulfill the Promise website. That is also where you can add your voice to this fight by signing the petition, urging President Biden and Education Secretary Cardona to take action today. Both the short-term needs of our children as we return to schools after a devastating pandemic, as well as the sustained permanent funding of IDEA must be met. We know that a healthy, healing, and racially equitable return to school does not involve stressful, high-stakes tests that are of little use during our distance learning reality. Throughout the school year, we have been working with our state and national affiliates to waive standardized tests this year. Sadly, the federal government has continued down a path that would require students, families, and educators to endure standardized testing after a unique year in education. Please allow me to be clear. Standardized tests have never been a valid, equitable, or reliable measure of what a student knows or can do. And they are especially unreliable now that these tests cannot be administered safely or with any consistency. The National Education is rolling out a campaign to cancel the test. Add your name to the open letter calling for all standardized tests to be canceled during the pandemic. I'll close with something I saw on Facebook from Marshall High School teacher Nicole Pfefferman. LAUSD seniors have had an experience like no other, graduating class or as juniors last year. They pushed through their second semester online, then spent their senior year in our virtual learning community. And now we begin to celebrate their post-high school plans. This week, one of Nicole's former students texted her excitedly to share that both UCLA and UCSD have accepted her. Next, of course, came a text stream back and forth between Nicole and the student with emojis and all caps saying congratulations. Nicole said she will give the student a hug when she sees her, but Nicole is hugging herself for now. Beautiful Nicole. And Nicole is also known by her students as Fefita. Orale, Fefita. These big, proud moments are one of the rewards of teaching. Teaching has continued during this grueling year. Learning has continued, and bonds between educators and students have been forged in new ways. Enjoy your spring break. It has never been so hard-earned. I hope you do something that makes you happy. Until next time, stay UTLA strong, because together we rise.